So one way of looking at it, there's a lot of different ways of saying it, but one way of looking at it is something like, for a very long time, depending on your point of view of time, maybe forever up until recently, um, the fundamental hurdle, the challenge that individuals and groups face is scarcity. Scarcity in terms of not enough, and particularly not enough things like food and water, or energy or shelter. You can go out from there, but it's scarcity. And everything that we do and everything that we've done has been an effort to figure out how to get out of that problem. Right? So how do we work together to make more food? And also, by the way, how do we protect the food that we've produced against other people who might want to use taking ours as a way of solving their problem? Right? And that's a long, hard problem to solve. And the sort of the general solution to that problem, as it's migrated through time, is what I've called in the past. I've used the term game aid to describe that. So the way of resolving the problem of scarcity in all of its different variations and all the feedback loops as other people are solving it their own way. Recently, we've begun to move into a zone, let's say starting in the 20th century and then increasingly over time, where the problem is not so much scarcity, but the tools of scarcity that we've used to resolve the problem of scarcity. Because the tools assume something about the nature of who we are and the nature of the problems we want to solve in the world and how we're going to about solving them, so that there's a scarcity mentality and a scarcity toolkit that is used to address the scarcity problem. But now the problem is actually the toolkit and the mentality. For example, we talked a lot about the idea of rivalrous versus anti-rivalrous. So rivalrous is an economic term that refers to things like a classic example would be like an apple. If you have an apple and I want the apple, the only way that I can have it is if you no longer have it. And if I consume it, it's gone forever. So that's a rivalrous object, something which is intrinsically scarce. Anti-rivalrous, I'll just kind of leap through the portal, would be something like the gospel, where if you've got the gospel and you give me the gospel, now we both have the gospel and it's more valuable the more deeply we enter into relationship with it. So anti-rivalrous. And the idea is that we've been playing for a very long time with how to navigate the rivalrous and using various kinds of tools like um, capitalism, carrot and stick incentive landscapes with, if you don't work, if those who work the hardest and the best get the highest rewards, those who don't get the least rewards and sometimes end up being impoverished and therefore have, marginal stuff. So carrot and stick, for example, that'd be a classic tool of the scarcity mentality. And we were quite successful in figuring out how to solve the problem of scarcity. This is something I've actually talked about recently, by producing a very large amount of scarce things. But because we haven't actually solved the problem of the scarcity mentality and the scarcity toolkit, what we do is we produce very large heaping piles of scarce things, but we still relate to them through the lens of scarcity. I've called this opulence. It's kind of the golden toilet problem or the gigantic pile of food. So instead of saying, hey, we actually don't need a gigantic pile of food, we need enough food that people have what they need. We definitely don't need gold toilets. We just need to have the ability to get rid of waste effectively. What does it look like to build a different approach? So that's a huge thing. But the point is, that was the kind of story that I was talking about 10 years ago. And the methodology, the way of solving it was something like, we have to get better at forming what we call I actually use the term collective intelligence. Like
Hmm.
when two or three people get together and they start to collaborate, something happens in that collaboration, which is more than the sum of the parts. So a team produces a synergy of perception. They can perceive more of reality, a synergy of imagination, and a synergy of execution that is larger than the sum of the parts. Right? So, hey, that's a collective intelligence. And so the idea was we need to find a way to go to a new form of collective intelligence by using, for example, the internet and AI and things like that, and other stuff as well. Not just hard technology, to produce a form of collective intelligence that has not been seen before on Earth, that has the ability to navigate the problem of scarcity and migrate us into this domain of abundance. That's very complicated. That's a lot. And so on the other side of metanoia, This is going to sound extremely silly almost, but the point is that it's hyper silly. This is bigger than silly. Now all I do is I say, I need to discern what God wants and then do it. And all that other stuff is a very, very complicated way of usurping a responsibility that is not mine. It's Saul.
Mhm.
All of that other stuff is basically Saul, very much Saul. I'm taking the spot of king, and I'm taking the responsibility of figuring out what to do that is right to the best of my ability. And the point is, all of that is actually going the wrong direction. So that's a pretty big shift, actually.